Welcome to the OCOM Podcast, Modern Medical Education, where we gather experts to discuss various topics in modern medical education, with the focus of today's show being on architecture of medical schools and designing the medical schools of the future. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Hasty, the Dean and the Chief Academic Officer of OCOM, and today we have a very, very special guest, a friend of mine, the designer for OCOM, Wayne Dunkelberger. He's the Chief Design Officer for Baker Barris Architect, which is a major architectural firm based here out of Orlando, and just an incredible thought leader in architecture. So welcome to the show, Wayne. How are all things design, Baker Barrios Architects, BB&A?
Thank you, Dr. Hasty, for having me. It's a pleasure, and BBA and architecture is going great. It's a fabulous year. We're looking forward to great things on the horizon in 2025. So fantastic so far.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll tell you, I was so looking forward to this show just because, Wayne and I had spent so much time, designing OCOM, and to have him and with the whole team, and to have him here in the studio today to talk about, some of the inspiration for OCOM, the design, the thoughtfulness that went into. So it is so nice to have you here, Wayne. So thank you.
It's great. It's great coming back. Not often do I get to come back. Usually I'm on to another project, but it's great to come back and to hear stories and to see how things work or didn't work, right? You always want the proof so that you can do better in the future, or you can repeat what you've done well the first time. So those are always great things. Having a critical eye when you walk into the space that you've worked on and designed and spent so much time on is helpful. And it's great to be back here and to see that it actually is working.
Well, and you said what works and what doesn't work. I'll tell you, we've been in the building for about 14 months now. There is nothing that I would really change. I mean, maybe a light, fixture here or there, or a socket or something like that, an extra receptacle or something like that. But outside of that, I mean, it's been incredible. We love this building. I think it's going to really, help OCOM, not only for years ahead, for decades ahead. And we love the design, and I'll tell you, every day I get compliments about the building, how beautiful the facilities are, the thoughtful design every single day. So thank you, Wayne. Yeah.
Well, that tells us that you and I did a good job in the beginning, right? Because it took a lot of hard work, a lot of workshops, a lot of thought before we even put anything on paper, right? So it was really about thinking about the future, right? And trying to solve something 5 and 10 years from now, not in the moment, not when we were first sitting down. And so to have happy students, faculty, staff is a credit to the whole entire team that worked on this project. So kudos to them all. Yes.
Well, thank you, Wayne. And and I think back about the design, and I'm sure I was probably probably a tough client because I had all these wish lists that I had, and I created a video for you to of all the stuff that we were kind of we had our own little imaging board and a slideshow and stuff like that, and you were so patient with me, and so I really appreciate you. And
you're actually the best client we've had, and I don't just say it to every client, by the way, just in case you're wondering. It was great that you had pre-thought, planned out some ideas. It really helps in shaping the future and to understand your vision. Our job is really to create something visible that's invisible, right? It's always about what's in your mind and then how does it appear when it's built, and to have so much resources from you and so much input, and then really honestly for your engagement on every step of the way. We don't often get that from clients. Usually they're in and out because they're doing something else, but you're so focused that I think that the vision is your vision, and what was created was what we started with in the beginning. And I'm extremely happy and pleased that it's a success.
Well, we love it, and I'll tell you, I've been personally changed with working with you, Wayne, because I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of great people, in my career. I've been very blessed, but I would say, and I've worked with incredible physicians and everything like that, I would say that you're probably one of the best listeners I've ever worked with. And actually, it's inspired me. And actually, learning from you, I actually took in some of the skills that I learned from you into my administrative role as the dean of OCOM, and so thank you for that, and I'm also very fascinated how you learned it. Yeah.
I appreciate that compliment. I want to say it comes from a life of experiences, and probably the first experience was waiting tables and tending bar when I was in architecture school. You always have empathy, right? You always listen to a patron and their story and their life story, and sometimes you're there to just listen, and then sometimes you're there to offer advice. And architecture, very similar. You have to know when to listen and apply what you've heard to the design, and then also you have to know when you're just listening to listen. And those are both important characteristics to being successful, I think, in any business, not just architecture. But our goal is, once again, really to hear you and to really design what we've heard. And so your compliment means that the vision aligned with your original goals and the school's goals. So that is a high compliment. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'll tell you, it was incredible work with you. And Wayne is, sort of the head design of all of BB&A, which is this huge architectural firm. They're in multiple states, and Chicago and Tennessee and Nashville and all these places. And really to be able to spend so much time with you, I mean, it was an incredible gift for OCOM, and it was such a pleasurable experience. I'll never forget it. Yeah, we were looking on something, and he said, "Oh, well, when I was working with the Disney Imagineers on the gondola ride, or
That's
whatever
right.
it was called over at Disney, I did this, and to have somebody with that level of expertise and experience, it was pretty incredible."
Well, I will say, done many different project types, but the education project type to me is the most important. Education is really the path, right? And so we're creating a space that shapes people's future through the space itself. And so what we are is a conduit for your teaching, right? And so students will want to come back and give back in the right environments. And I truly believe that the environment does help shape a person's success in life. And so in an education school, in a medical school, it's all about hitting those nuances that make students happy to be in the place they're in, and then to focus on their important studies and work. And so a building needs to be at times invisible and just do its job to help the student and the faculty and staff to do what is important to these students and the future careers. And so I think that's a really important part of design and education, medical schools. And then also, it also wants to be a beacon too, right? So it wants to do two things. It wants to be silent when it needs to be, but it also wants to be a way to connect the community and the students to the place. And placemaking is an important thought and theory in architecture and design. And really here at OCOM, it was really connecting to the current space, because if you've been to this site, there wasn't a lot here. When we first started, it was an empty field with beautiful landscape. And so thinking ahead 3 and 4 and 5 years to create the building is one thing, but then thinking ahead 20 and 25 years and how to still connect to the place is a challenge in design, challenge in education, because this is a 100, 200-year building. And if we do that right, it will always have the same meaning it had on the first day it opened. So it is important.
And to me, one of the things that that you brought into this project was looking at what was an orange grove and wild turkeys when you first walked the property, and and also the positioning of OCOM, literally on top of a hill. And literally the fastest growing community in Orange County, Horizon West, 10 new rooftops a day, and it's it's going to grow, and eventually there'll be a whole bunch of buildings around us, and to transform this 25-acre campus, and also the building, and I can tell you that the medical students at OCOM are inspired, I think, by the facility. And, of course, you had to think about all the things like, we wanted a single point of entry for security, yet you had, Orange County wanted a certain storefront, but we wanted the single point of entry to go out to the parking lot where people walk in and engage in the building. And then to think about a term I learned, sociological third places, right? Or third
That's right.
spaces,
Third
right?
spaces. Yeah, that's right.
To have those folks that, the students can actually just get together at just these casual encounters or actually right before, we came to the podcast today, we were, in what we call, I guess we call it the Genius Bar. I think it's supposed to be called the Tech Bar or something like that, which is a central part of OCOM that has all the glass and everything. And it just became a central gathering space for the entire IT team to talk about some of the design of OCOM and and how it really changes conversations and how it does inspire the learning of the future physicians. It's, to me, I mean, it's a magical thing when we can bring architects, modern medical education, that thought for, again, the training the physician of the future and what does the curriculum look like in 10, 20, 50 years from now, right?
Right. And having a building that you can actually convert is important too, right? I mean, we know that the building won't always fit all needs, so that having a building and a design that actually works, that you can actually change over time is equally important, but still maintain the character. The original design tenets and ideas is important. I will say on the Genius Bar, it's an interesting thing because it's a technology piece that every student uses, right? They may like it or they may not, but it's so important that every student has it. So you had talked about showcasing it, right? Putting it out front, making it a star of the show, so to speak. In other places and other universities, that may not be the forward thinking, but it's where all students come. And if you get them to come to one place and they all interact and mingle, they learn new things. And that was important. And I think that is a successful location for the Genius Bar.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I'm just always inspired with you, Wayne, is that, how do you become a Wayne Dunkelberger? This architect that can actually, take all these different fields. One day you're probably working with, venture capitalists and business entrepreneurs. The next day you're, talking to, a dean of a developing osteopathic medical school about, developing the medical school of the future and stuff. And, and you're always like, such an incredible listener. You always wearing a bow tie. I swear that you don't sleep because I've emailed you late at night and I get a response back, right away.
I don't sleep a lot. No.
So how do you even become a Wayne Dunkelberger? How do you, what was your path to architecture and, how did you become you?
First of all, I want to say I love people. Right, and I have a degree in philosophy. I started in architecture when I was in high school. I went to philosophy, got a degree in philosophy, and then I also worked in the service industry. And I just love people. And one of the things that I think gives back the most is the path in architecture. Architecture is a career that actually you are in the service of others. I know that many architects, they design a special building and it's part of their art. But what it really is a symbol for the community and the place in which it sits. And what it really should be is inspire everybody that comes to that building and that community. And what I love about architecture is that it helps people. And so comm schools, even office buildings, it becomes part of their lives. And to me, that is gratifying. And I do probably sleep 3-4 hours a day. I work 7 days a week, and I wouldn't change a thing. I love every minute of it.
I love it. Yeah. You talked about the service industry. So I, as far as I know, I'm the only medical school dean in America that's a Publix retiree. So I literally worked, 5 years at Publix. And if you work 5 years at Publix and you quit, they call that a retiree. And I still get invited to the retiree tailgating things once in a while and everything from Publix. But it's so funny how your early experiences, bartending, working in service industry, shaped you. And I swear that, working at Publix, helped me become the person I am too. So that's an incredible thing. One of the things I was always impressed working with you too is, your use of technology. So, even with OCOM, you were so thoughtful of using technology to design, the fact that our buildings, east to west and, the light study and, the number of windows on the south side versus the north side. We have more windows on the north side because it's more energy efficient, yet we also wanted to capture the beautiful view of, Lake Ingram, which is our name lake, which by the way does have alligators in it. And,
I'm sure.
All these things in there. So, so I'm interested, because we were pre-AI.
We
Talk
were.
about and I'm sure that you're adapting to some of the newer technologies too. So I'd love to hear about that.
It's funny, Dr. Hasty. In our profession, we always think about site and site analysis, right? It's always about how does a building position itself on the site? How is it received, both from an end user and how is it received by the environment, right? And so those are natural things that we do in architecture. But you just brought up an interesting point. In the last 2 years, technology has eclipsed what we were doing when we first worked on this building. We use AI software now that actually can tell you the decibels from the highway and how it affects the side of the building. And so we're applying that in every project. It tells you the heat load on the roof, on the walls, things that we know, but this software validates all the things that we do. And so to be able to show that to a client up front and say, here's the decision and here is why, is a really important thing. And even when we were together, the ideas that we bought into, I think work. I mean, we know that the glass is on the north side, and it's a beautiful view, and it worked out perfect. The sun in Florida is brutal. The heat is really high, especially in the summer. And so all of those things work, and they make this space work for the students. And can't stress that enough, that if you make an environment that is happy, that is well lit, that feels like you want to be there, you're going to excel in that space. And so those are the important things. We do use AI a lot now too. We didn't do that back then because it wasn't available, right? So we would hand draw, we would draw things and we would present to you. Now we use Midjourney and some other softwares that actually create an image of what you are saying, and then we're able to present that back to the client. And not necessarily to do the work, but to actually make your thoughts visible. It's really hard to get into somebody's mind and to really express that in an art form. But by doing multiple drawings and renderings, we get to a solution that you and other clients are looking for. And now we use AI to help us with that.
Incredible. Yeah. It's another thing that's really changing how so many people do their work, right? We talked on a previous podcast, probably one of the trickiest jobs to do in a medical school, or probably one of the most boring jobs, is to grade SOAP notes or progress notes for, the future physicians. And now we're actually using that to, AI to actually grade that, which is, kind of a laborious task. But, the fact that you're actually using it to help inspire people and tell the story, to the clients and, see what they're, try to feel out their vision, it's actually pretty cool.
Well, I will say we do use it for laborious tasks too, by the way. we do put many drawing tasks are now done with AI too. So we use it both. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now let me ask you this, because I know you've designed, I think, 4 medical schools. You're going on to your 5th one right now.
Yes.
I think we were the 3rd, if I recall.
You were
Second
the
or
3rd.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So what have you learned from designing medical schools, and what would you advise future medical medical schools for their future buildings and stuff like that you've learned?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I will say this. I think the one thing that I have learned most about medical schools is that medical students spend more time in medical buildings than other students in other degrees. So oftentimes we're asked to think of it as a 24/7 building, and a lot of times there's weekend classes. And so in designing a building like that, it has to be multifunctional, and it has to be able to operate night, day, and weekends, but also offer a facility that you would want to be there on the weekend when everything else around it may not be available. And so medical schools have that challenge to them, and that how do I make it so that if I'm a mother and I work on the weekend, or I come to school for nursing on the weekends because that's the only time I can study or the only time I can learn, how does that invite me in, and how does it make me want to really do that? And so those are really important things that I've learned, especially we finished Memphis Baptist Health as well, comm school. It was a retrofit, but it also has weekends and night school to help out their community. And it's really that extra offering that is not that you don't find in a necessarily a law school or even architecture school, although architects do spend a lot of time in school. But
I went to University of Miami undergraduate, and actually, I used to walk past the architectural building. And, man, it seems like they were always in their drafting, but it was pre, CAD. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I want to say they still stay late, I think.
Yeah. I guess now it's just on the computer instead of the big draft board.
They take it home with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
But I don't know, medical schools, a lot of things you actually have to be in the building for, right? I mean, of course, you can take the laptop and you can connect technology, and that's really important, especially for our new generations of students. And buildings adapt to that, right? I mean, we adapt to that. We adapt libraries and things that actually create and stimulate an idea that you can learn anywhere, right? But there is a core element to actually coming to a physical space and actually sharing time with other people and commiserating, maybe is probably a better word. But it gives you a connection to a medical community, which I think is important. So the building itself supports that idea that I want to be in this building and I want to be with my other students and I want to share in the learning of those things. And that's I think the chief goal of a medical school is to foster that belief and that collegiality of coming together.
I love it. I'm also fascinated because, you've done so many projects, right? You've worked with Disney Imagineers and medical schools and big buildings and things like that. What were your favorite projects over the years? Yeah.
Interesting. So education's always been my favorite because when you think of education, you think of timeless buildings. And how do I set the stage to a campus or to a university? And in your case, this is the very first building, right? There was nothing here. And those are really important things. I will say, if you ask me what I'm working on today, well, yeah, I've got a medical school, but I also have a performing arts center. I have a office building. I'm working on a couple mixed-use high-rise residential. So they all vary, and they're all different, right? And so I got a hotel I'm working on as well. But they all support this belief in people and communities, right? They at their root, it's part of what we are as human beings, and that really needs to support whatever the building type is. And so I find that to be a universal truth in any project type, and I find it to be uplifting to people.
Interesting. It's also fascinating to me. I would say the premier architectural firm in Central Florida, and really, and most people, or some people don't know this, that really Disney wouldn't be here had it not been for the love and passion of Walt Disney for urban design, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, he looked at an orange grove when he got here, right? And so, yes, he had a innate passion for urban design and planning and really creating a space that no one had seen before. And so it's fascinating. And working at Disney and Universal have been really fascinating as well.
Yeah. And then, and I've had this conversation with Mayor Demings. He's the mayor of Orange County. And, we talk about, we're in some ways, we're really kind of, I think, fulfilling, Walt's, vision and dream, for this, urban design area. And, when you look around, we have such a fast growing area. I think we're one of the fastest growing areas in America right now. And I know when we started OCOM, we had a population here for Central Florida, or for the Orlando metro statistical area, of 2.7 million. I know it's going to be about 5.2 million by 2030, according to all the economic, forecasting and stuff like that. And, all this growth. And, we have so many, a lot of early career, leaders that are just, visionary. You look at the healthcare sectors with Advent Health and Orlando Health and what they're doing. You look at, a lot of the businesses, a lot of the, hotels and, and service industries and stuff like that. I really think we are, designing this metropolitan area of the future, and it's fascinating to be in the position that you're in, to be able to help design these spaces and make spaces that people resonate with and love to live here. And And so it's an interesting job that you have, Wayne. Yeah.
Well, I do think Orlando's a great place, and there's always this idea of technology in space too was one of the benchmarks of this area as well with the Cape Canaveral too, and so those are always inspiring, right? As a location, I think that when we see tech companies come in, gaming companies come in, they bring a different idea. And it actually helps shape our community. When you came here, there was no medical school out here. There was a hospital, just recently I think opened, or not too far, and there weren't very many roads here when you came, right? And so, because you brought this school here, everything has been built around it, and it will continue to grow because of the school. You start to bring people start to connect. People come to school here. They may want to stay here because they like it so much and they're connected to where they learned how to become a doctor or a physician. And so it's important. And so I think the gravity of that is super important. The building is great, but I think what you do here is more inspiring and helps a community grow even bigger than what it would have had if you weren't here.
Thank you for that, Wayne. So I'll tell you, this has been an incredible, show, and to be able to learn from you and listen, to you, is always inspiring to me. So really appreciate it. So, any last thoughts or anything that you wanted to include in our discussion today?
Wow, that's a good question. I do want to say that it's been a pleasure working with you, working with the team here, and coming back and visiting. It's inspiring. It inspires me actually to go back to the office and work some more.
Love it. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Wayne, and really appreciate you, all the incredible work that you've done for not only OCOM, but for, I'd say, medical education in general, because I think, the impact of, some of the buildings that you've done is going to be far reaching, and also for architecture, for Central Florida and all, the other, BB&A projects over the country. So we're very blessed to have you here in Central Florida, and BB&A is very blessed to have you. So anyway, well, thanks again for joining the show, Wayne. And this is, another edition of Modern Medical Education, the OCOM Podcast. Thanks for joining us today, and please join us for the next episode.